David here with Figboot on Pens. Today I have the very first installment of Q&A. I really appreciate everyone sending in questions. I got some really great ones. Now, I haven't really thought of a catchy name yet for these videos, and down the line, if I do more of these, I definitely want to do something a little bit different than just answering a bunch of questions. I've thought about doing some ink reviews. Maybe that's something that would be good to work in with questions, so who knows? We'll see where this goes. But for today, though, I have a bunch of questions to answer. And I will say that quite a few of them are about me personally. And I don't think that every Q&A will be this me-centric, but I thought that it would be a good opportunity to share a little bit about myself in regard to fountain pens as well as some other topics. So let's get started. Very first question is I received a number of questions in regard to the origins of the name Figboot. Graham Romeo is a Canadian author and illustrator, and he has written a number of very humorous books. And in my opinion, his Bigfoot trilogy of In Me Own Words, Me Write Book, and I Not Dead are just hilarious. Like most comedy, it can be very polarizing. Either you will read these books out and laugh out loud and think that it's the funniest thing you've ever heard, or you will think it's the dumbest thing you've ever read. In Me Write Book, it tells such stories as the time that Bigfoot tried out for Sesame Street, or the time when he was a sumo wrestler in Japan. But there's one page where that he has a dating profile, and on that profile his username is Figboot. Well, technically it's Figboot_2001, but you get the idea. And Figboot is the moniker that I've been using for a long time when it comes to username and character names in games and things along those lines. And it's something that usually isn't taken when you have to create a username, so that's nice. And I really liked this book and the illustrations so much that I actually contacted Graham and commissioned him to do a piece of original art. And this is the piece he created for me. It's Bigfoot poking a beehive with a stick. And I just love it. That it is really, truly one of my prized possessions, and it hangs in my office at work, and I can see it every day. And also, that picture is my profile picture. So, another question is from Dreadfully Divine and Mitch Mann, and both of them asked what was my very first fountain pen. I had a coworker who had a Lamy Safari that he used on occasion, and he showed it to me one day, and I was intrigued. He told me about a website called jetpens.com and encouraged me to check the site out. And I did. And I really had zero idea of what I was doing. I think I was just looking for some of the more inexpensive Lamy pens, since that was one that he had purchased. And I picked up this pen, which is a silver Lamy All-Star with a fine nib. And it's funny looking back at how naive I was. I really had no idea what I was even buying, but I liked the pen, and it became my daily writer for quite some time, for about a year. And that I would just go back to jet pens to pick up cartridges, but the bug really hadn't bit me, and that I really never looked to see what else was out there. Then, like I said, about a year later, I was on vacation with my family, and we happened to be in Paris, and I was walking around the underground mall beneath the Louvre, and walked into a stationery store called Delphonics, and I just happened to see a display of Lamy Safaris. I just recognized the little box that they come in, and that I picked up this black Safari. And so this was my second pen, and I picked it up just to have two pens rather than one. Then fast forward another 6 months or so, and I was part of the annual Reddit Secret Santa gift exchange. And I had mentioned to my Santa that I had a couple of fountain pens and was getting to be interested in them. And that what they did was they gave me a gift set with this Parker Urban. And it included my very first bottle of ink, which was a Parker Quink. And again, for about a year or so, I was content with my 3 pens. And that one day I really don't know what triggered it, but I thought to myself that, you know what, hey, I'm really enjoying these 3 pens. So the dangerous question arose in my head of, I wonder what other pens are out there. And that's when I began searching and quickly became overwhelmed. There were so many pens out there. I wasn't quite sure what to choose, and that I was afraid of making a bad buying decision. But in the grand scheme of things, I really had no idea what I liked and what I disliked about pens. And I just knew that I liked the 3 that I had. And so after tons of research, I decided to purchase a TWSBI Diamond 580, and that pen was really the one that kicked off my pen journey, because when I received that pen and began using it, I thought to myself that this pen is really, really cool. And then I proceeded to ask myself an even more dangerous question, which was, if this pen was cool, then what other pens might be cool? And that's how I began becoming interested in fountain pens. So the next question, there was a number of questions in regard to pen storage and how I store my collection. Now, I actually have an entire video dedicated to this topic. I use a combination of several different storage methods. For some pens, I have a couple of 48 pen cases. Then I have a 24 pen wood case where I keep my favorite pens. Then I have a wood toolbox that has a bunch of really nice smaller drawers to keep supplies, converters, and cartridges and things like that, as well as a couple of drawers for pens. And then I have a drawer unit from IKEA called the Alex, where I have a couple of drawers dedicated to pens, another for paper, and then there's 3 drawers for ink. Right now, I'm pretty good on space. I have a bit of room to expand, but not that much, but a bit. You can check out the full storage video here, or you can click on the link that I'll put in the notes below. For our next question, Kevin Parks asks, when you do the fast writing sample, what is it you always write? It looks like D and then the @ sign. Well, when I was coming up with how I wanted to put reviews together, there's a lot of thought that went into things. Other than just having fun putting these reviews together as just an extension of my hobby, my main goal was try to create some quality content, something that I could be proud of, that I would want to watch myself. But there was a lot of decisions to make. Where was I going to record? What format was I going to use? During the writing sample, was I going to use the Quick Brown Fox or something else? I'm a big film buff, and so I thought about doing movie quotes. And then, I decided that it was going to be challenging enough to do the reviews, and I didn't need to create extra homework for myself every review to come up with a new quote or something like that. Matt Armstrong does that, and it works out great for him. But I know myself, and that I would spend way too long looking for just that perfect quote that was relevant to the pen or topical or something like that. So that's how I ended up doing the writing sample that I do. But in regard to the fast writing, I didn't want to just do the same quote but faster. I want to do something different. I thought about doing my signature because I can write that fast, but posting my signature all across the internet isn't such a good idea. So I just write my initials. So Kevin, you are correct. It's a D and the @ sign. Because my first name is David and my middle name is Allen. Now that's A-L-L-E-N. I don't trust those A-L-A-N guys. They're a little bit too shifty. But over the years, my A just kind of morphed into the @ sign just because it flowed nicely. Do you know what the technical term for the @ sign is? I looked into it, and it is called the @ sign. It doesn't really have a fancy name like an ampersand or anything like that. Well, sometimes it's called the commercial @ but that's not too exciting. So, okay, that leads into another subject that I received a few questions about, and that is handwriting. Okay, I fully admit that my handwriting is unique, to say the least. It is a strange combination of printing and cursive, which has developed over the years. It works for me, but I realize that it's an acquired taste. I realize that some letters are rather untraditional, and that I realize at times I can write the same letter different ways in the same word. And I realize my capital S's look like the S from the rock band Kiss logo. Hey, now that's intentional. What can I say? I grew up in the 70s. Kiss was cool back then. I never once thought that I would be putting my handwriting out on display for everyone to see. And that it's funny because, this is the internet, and you're going to get people who express themselves behind their keyboards in ways that really aren't constructive or appropriate. And the vast, vast, vast majority of comments I receive have been fantastic. And that I really appreciate that. But I have received 3 comments that I felt necessary to delete, which were purely vulgar and insulting and really adding nothing to the conversation. And it really takes a lot for me to delete a comment. I take that power seriously. Just because you disagree with me or don't care for something I do, that's not a reason for me to censor your comment. But if you express yourself in a purely insulting manner, then I can't let that stand. But there's 3 comments that I had to delete, and 2 were insulting me over my handwriting. And they were both from the same user, both from the same guy. The guy hated my handwriting so much that he had to comment on 2 different videos about how terrible he felt it was. And I will give him credit, though. He didn't just copy and paste the same comment, that he actually came up with new and creative insults for each of the videos. So I have thought about working to improve my handwriting. My main fear is that when you learn a new skill like that you're going to get worse before you get better. And that, it takes a while to build up that muscle memory. And I wasn't sure if I wanted to subject everyone to my cursive looking like it was done by a 3rd grader. So it's a definite possibility that I'll be working on my handwriting behind the scenes. And one of these days, you just might be surprised when I bust out some true cursive during a review. Until then, it is what it is. So as far as the next question, Greg Splond asks, how many pens do you carry daily? And then also Matt Dillon asks, do you usually have a pen of the day, week, month, or do you just grab whatever feels right at the time? And then also Spencer Clark asks if I have a system of rotating through my pens. In regard to the first section, or the first question, I select 1 pen a day, and that pen has been deemed to be the pen of the day that I will use, generally mostly at work. Now, there have been days when I've been rushed in the morning or something like that, and I've left for work without bringing a pen. And those are very bad days. But thankfully, they are very few and far between. But if I ever do forget to bring a pen, then I carry a disposable zebra pen. Here it is. A disposable zebra pen with me in my bag. And I use this pen for the day as my punishment for neglecting to bring one that I really care for to work. So this is really, using this pen is a deterrent for me not to forget bringing one of my nice pens to work ever again. So I'm glad that it's few and far between, and this is a pretty good deterrent. In regard to some of the other questions about rotating through my pens, okay, I realize that I have little quirks and idiosyncrasies, and that, I'm a data analyst by trade. And so recording and categorizing and documenting and reporting on things is just what I do on a daily basis. And so it's natural that I would do the same thing for my pen collection. I've created an Excel workbook which I've used to document all my pens and inks. I call it my everyday Cary log, or EDC log for short. In it, I keep track of all my pens and inks, as well as tracking what I paid for each one of them. But I also keep track of what pen I bring to work each day. The spreadsheet will tell you how long it's been since you've used particular pens, and even tell you things like which pen you use the most, and even show you what days of the week you use each pen as well. It's interesting to see what pens you end up choosing based on the days of the week. In my mind, pens can definitely match up with the days of the week. There are pens I mostly use on Mondays or Tuesdays or very early in the week, like an LB5 or like a Pelikan M805 or something along those lines. Those are definitely Monday and Tuesday pens. And then there's others that I have a tendency to use more on Fridays, like a Cary Custom Ink. That's a really good Friday pen when it's more casual and you're wearing jeans or something along those lines. Now, I've posted 2 videos on this EDC log, and I'll put a link below to the main video. But if you're interested, in the notes to the log video, there is a link to download a copy of the workbook, and you can use it and alter it for yourself for your own collection. It's just something I created for my own use, but if others can get use out of it, then that's great. The next question is, Sandra asks, is there any ink that is universally liked or revered amongst the community that you felt short after trying? Now, when I first started getting into pens, it was around the time when J. Herband came out with their 1670 Stormy Gray, and there was a lot of buzz about that ink. Everyone was talking and raving about it, and when I first got it, I admit that I thought it was really cool, and I really liked it a lot. And I proceeded to purchase the Blue Ocean as well as the Emerald de Chivor when it came out, but over time, I kind of found out that I really don't care for the shimmer feature that much in these inks, as well as the Diamine Shimmertastic line. I've had it clog up some pens a little bit, and I think the bottles look very cool. And I thought that the cap could be a little bit larger on the bottle, and the hole could be a little bit larger. Some of the larger pens don't really fit into the bottle. And I know there's a lot of folks out there who love these inks, but just for me personally, the performance didn't live up to the hype, and the shimmer novelty wore off rather quickly. And I really don't use those inks as much as I have in the past. That being said, I do think that seeing the gold at the bottom of the bottle is pretty cool. Next question is, Cary Jansen asks, what is your favorite ink of the moment? That when I first got into fountain pens, I really didn't care that much about ink. I had my one bottle of Parker Quink, and I was happy with it and really didn't feel the need for having a bunch of different colors. Well, that didn't last very long. I currently have in my collection 109 full bottles of ink, as well as some samples. But I find that I go through phases. At first, I was really into a bunch of blacks, and then a bunch of blue blacks, and then a bunch of blues. I have a lot of blues, way too many blues. But lately, I've been more into browns and greens. My favorite brown right now, I actually have 2. One would be the Bungbox Piano Mahogany. It's a really nice kind of dark reddish brown. And then I also really, really like the Franklin Christoph Terra Firma. And that's more of a reddish brown. You can kind of see it's a little more on the red side, but I really like both of these browns. And in regard to greens, I've been using Mont Blanc Irish Green a lot. I actually think it looks better on the page than it does in this ink sample. It doesn't look so great on the ink sample, but on the page it looks really nice. It comes across a little bit darker. But then also one I picked up that I really like a lot is Diamine Apple Glory. Apple Glory is a really nice bright green that reminds me of a Granny Smith apple. And it's not so bright that it's unusable. And it doesn't look silly on the page. It just kind of really pops. So I guess that's more than one ink, but that's kind of what I've been into lately. As far as next questions, Scott Williams and a couple others asked about the equipment that I use in creating videos and lighting and some of the camera setups and editing software. Now, creating and producing these reviews is really a confluence of a number of different skill sets, some of which I do better than others, but it's an opportunity for me to learn and grow and refine some skills. One of my goals when I started off was to work with what equipment I had. I didn't want to go out and buy a bunch of equipment only to find out that this wasn't for me. So I started off with my camera. I have a Handycam, which is a CX160. And then the first few videos, I didn't even use a mic. I just used the in-camera mic. And I had a tripod already. And that was it. That's what I used. And then I've kind of grown, and I purchased a couple of lights, which we'll take a look at in a second. I'll kind of show you my setup when I'm done with this section here. For some of the close-up pictures, I just use my iPhone and a nice little macro lens that fits on here. Improving my pictures is something that I've worked towards, and so one of the things I went out and purchased was I purchased a nice Nikon D3300 and have been working on trying to take better pictures. But macro lenses for a real camera, so to speak, are several $100s, and I wanted to get those really nice close-up pictures. And that I was actually talking with Brian Goulet about it, and he really suggested actually picking up one of these. These were maybe about $70, but this is what I use for all of my close-up pictures with my iPhone, and it works fantastic. And it's a lot less than having to purchase a $400, $500, $600 lens that I probably wouldn't use as much on that camera. But these are very, very helpful. Then also for a microphone, I use a Yeti Blue. I'm going to try picking this up without making a bunch of noise. But I have a Yeti Blue microphone. That's not what I had to start off. As I mentioned, to start off with, I just used the camera in or the microphone in the camera, and then I had a little cheap lavalier, like a little $20 lavalier mic that I used for a while, but I think this was a good investment to get some better quality sound. I actually just purchased a microscope camera. I'm not quite sure if the quality is going to be better than I get with this, but I thought that if I wanted to get super close, then on some things that it might be interesting. So coming up soon, you might see a microscope camera that I use, and that. When I take my pictures, I have a nice big window that I'll show here in a second, and that I open that up and get some nice sunlight. And the pictures that I take are generally with sunlight as opposed to artificial light. So what I'll do now is I'll just kind of show you, I'll actually go over to my iPhone and kind of show you what it looks like from where I sit and what my normal setup is, and then also what the writing sample setup looks like. So this is my view when doing the reviews. Have the camera right in front of me, and then also have the two lights that are up here, and then the microphone sitting on a little stand right in front of me. And then what you really don't see is that I generally, all the junk that's on my desk, I usually pile up right behind the chair. So it gives the illusion that I have a nice clean desk, but most of the time there's a lot more junk on there. But lights are very, very important. These lights are not very expensive. They're only, $35, $40, something like that for a decent set of lights. And having some good lighting when you're making videos makes the world of difference and really increases the quality. You kind of want to black out your windows and don't have any interior lights on and just use these lights. And it gives you a much better look. And then that's what it looks like from the other side. So here's a look at the writing setup. I have my same two lights that I just turn around and turn onto the table. I have my microphone that I have sitting right next to the table so that we can capture some of the sounds of the writing. Then I have my paper, some of the ink samples that I'll show, usually the ink bottle, and the pens off to the side that we'll use for the size comparisons. And then if you notice, the camera is actually upside down. So what happens is you actually shoot it upside down and then turn it over in post. And that's the best way of doing that. And then, I'm trying to do my best to get a better angle because, I typically write off to the side a little bit. And I need to do a better job of doing that because if I try writing dead straight on, then it's a little unnatural for me. And my creative handwriting looks a little bit more creative. And I have noticed that lately my table bounces a little bit. And so I'm trying to quell that by adding a board down here. So we'll see if that helps some of the bounce and movement of the table because that's not something that I've cared for. But that is the writing sample setup. In regard to editing, I use Adobe After Effects for the intro and the measurements, and then I use a program called Camtasia for editing everything else together. Now, eventually I might transition over to Adobe Premiere Pro, but that would mean learning a new program. Again, that's an opportunity to learn something new. So I used Camtasia because I was familiar with it, and I have it down, and I can just bust out a program or bust out a video. But eventually, like I said, I might transfer over to Adobe Premiere Pro go to learn that program, because I know that is a much more powerful tool. Next question is, Daniel asks, do you feel any competition with other YouTube reviewers of fountain pens? If another person reviewed a pen before you, do you tell yourself, I'm going to smash his review by making a better one? I got a kick out of that question. And Daniel, no, not at all. If anything, for me, it's a really healthy competition that makes me want to do a better job and produce a higher quality product. There are folks that do an outstanding job with their reviews. When I'm writing a review for a specific pen, I do a good deal of research, but I really try to stay away from watching other reviews. I don't want to be swayed by other people's opinions and want the review really to be my own. I don't want to just parrot back what everyone else is saying. And in my experience, all of the other reviewers that I've interacted with have been very helpful and extremely supportive. So I try to be the same. When I was thinking about starting to do this, I really thought hard about it. I wrote down all the pros and cons and was really leaning towards not doing reviews. I mean, putting these things together is a lot of work and a very large time commitment. But then I happened to see one of Stephen Brown's videos entitled, "Why Aren't You Doing Reviews?" And in it, he basically says that if you're thinking about doing it, then do it. And that can be applied to just about anything in life. And for me, it was the right message at the right time. And it really helped me make the decision to fully commit to this. One of the main objectives in doing these reviews for me is to have a unique voice. I didn't want to just be a copycat and produce more of the same. Does the world really need another Pilot Metropolitan review? Probably not. But I wanted to bring my own personality and style to the table, and I wanted to have fun and try to provide some good information and possibly some good entertainment. Stephen has access to a fantastic variety of pens and has a clear, helpful style that I really like. Matt Armstrong has a superb production quality in addition to providing fantastic information. And hopefully there's folks out there that watch my videos that like them for their unique qualities as well. There have been times when, I knew Matt and I both had the same pen, and that we both had them coming up for review, and that we've coordinated dates a little bit so we weren't producing reviews of the same pen too close together. In my mind, that's not about competition. It's not about who gets to review it first. It's more about the fact that if I was watching a bunch of reviews, I'd be disappointed if two folks I watched, reviewed the same pen like one day away from each other, And so in the end, I think it's all about providing that unique voice. I don't think one reviewer is necessarily better than another, that everyone has their strengths. And it's all about who you feel you have a connection with. And if you can feel a connection with more than one reviewer or more than one person, then that's fantastic. But yeah, everyone that I've dealt with has been fantastic. Second to last question is, what is your favorite sub 150 pen? And you know what? I'm sorry, I forgot to write down who said that. But, well, I'm going to delay answering this one a little bit and tease a little bit of what I have coming up in the very near future. Last year in December, I put out a video of my top 10 pens. In it, I showed how my tastes and opinions changed over the year as I delved deeper into this hobby. This year, I'm going to do something a little bit different. If I just came out with my top 10 favorite pens, for the most part, it would just be dominated by some fairly expensive pens. And that might not help a large number of folks. I know that when I was starting off, I sought out every top 10 list I could find in order to help me determine what pens I should purchase. And everyone is at different levels of this hobby. Some folks are just starting off, some folks want more mid-range pens, and others more interested in high-end pens. So what I'm going to do over the month of December is put out 4 different top 10 lists, each focusing on a particular price range. The first will be for pens under $50, then another one for pens between $50 and $100, then another one for pens between $100 and $250, and then finally one for what I'll call the unlimited class, pens over $250. This way, no matter what level of collecting you're at, you could this could be some information that you could use. So December will be a very busy month for me. I'll be putting out pen reviews each Saturday, and then the top 10 lists in the middle of the week. So that's 9 videos in the month. So that's a lot of work, but doable, and I'm sure it'll be a lot of fun to do. Finally, for the final question, Jed Goodluck asks, we've seen your Rubik's Cubes and you've mentioned magic, but what are other hobbies or collections you might have? Well, I have lots of other hobbies. I love to read. I'm big into sports, mainly my San Diego teams. I grew up in San Diego. I'm a big fan of the Chargers as well as the Padres and San Diego State when it comes to college sports. I've lived in the Raleigh area of North Carolina for about 9 years, and even though it's really a hotbed of college basketball, I haven't developed a viable allegiance to any of the local college teams, those being UNC and Duke and NC State, though I have gone to basketball games for each. And I will say that attending a Duke basketball game at Cameron Indoor Arena is a bucket list type experience. It's truly a special place. Something neat is that if you're ever at the Duke campus, more often than not, the doors to Cameron Indoor Arena are just unlocked. You could just go in there and check the place out. There's really not much in there. It's more like a gym, kind of like a high school gym or something out of the movie Hoosiers. But once my son and I went down there and the gym was open and we just ran around the court for a while, and then we found a basketball under the stands and shot around for a bit, making 3-pointers and half-court shots. I mean, how often do you get to the opportunity to shoot around in what could only be considered as one of the more hallowed basketball courts in the world? It was just a lot of fun. In regard to other sports, I played tennis. I played tennis for both my high school as well as college teams, and I love to golf. You might have noticed, but for every pen review, except for a couple, I am wearing a golf shirt from a golf course that I have played. You can't always see the logo. It's sometimes a little bit tough to see, and it might get cut off a little bit. But pen reviews get golf shirts, and reviews of something else other than a pen or some other topic like a Q&A get t-shirts and maybe a hoodie or something like that. And yes, on my spreadsheet, I keep track of what shirt I wear for each review so that I make sure not to wear the same shirt too often. I'm big into computer gaming. That I used to work for a computer gaming peripheral company and dealt a great deal with the video game world and professional gaming. But that's a story for another day. I mentioned it before, but I'm also a film buff. I really love independent films and documentaries. And, I love to write and still hold a sliver of a dream of writing either a screenplay or possibly a book. Somewhere in the attic, I have a large stack of rejection letters from a publisher I received when trying to get a children's book published a while back. And, I do have a novel that I've outlined completely and I'm about 40 pages into. But, I'm at that point of self-doubt where you wonder if everything you've written is just terrible and won't work at all. So I haven't touched it in a bit. I think I just need to plow through and just finish it. If it's terrible, then it's terrible. But at least I think I would sense a sense of accomplishment for at least finishing it. Well, that's enough for today. I really appreciate you taking time to watch. I really appreciate all the questions. There were many good ones that I couldn't get to just for time's sake, and that I hope this has been entertaining enough for you. Even though listening to me ramble on about things might be challenging to listen to, that hopefully it was at least a little bit entertaining. If you'd like more Q&As, just let me know. I don't want to overdo it, but I think these would be fun to do every once in a while. And, that I also realized, like I said up front, that this QA was very much focused on me personally. And if I do this again, I'm going to work to focus on less me-centric things and more fountain pen-centric things. So in regard to one more hobby, I recently picked up a drone, and that I've had a lot of fun flying it around. And it's a DJ Phantom 3 standard, if you're into that kind of thing. And there is really not much use for drone footage in fountain pen reviews. But I thought I would leave you today with a quick shot of my house in my neighborhood. A couple of things to note. Yes, my car does have a Swedish front license plate. Again, that's a story for another day. And yes, those are balloons out front. We had a kid's birthday party earlier in the day. So who knows, down the line, you might see some more drone footage tacked on to the end of reviews. So thank you for watching, and I'll talk to you later.